didn't even record it, something like that. Okay, so okay, then we can get started. All right, go Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Curry, and I'm a clay sculpture artist here in Knoxville. I've worked in clay for probably about 30 years. And my former career, which I did do both at one time. I was a graphic designer at Oak Ridge National Lab, and I retired from there 3 years ago, and I'm now pursuing my art full time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right, so the next person we have is Mary.
Oh, hello. I hope you can hear me. I'm Mary Rudin. I'm located outside of Knoxville in Seymour, and I taught art at the college level for over 8 years. I taught at Pellissippi a little bit here in Tennessee, but I taught mostly down in Miami, Florida. And I'm a full-time artist and sculptor. I'm known for figurative sculptures of mostly famous people, and I have something in City Hall, bronze bust. I'm doing 2 commissions right now that are bronze statues for the courthouse. And so that's kind of what I do, but I've done a lot of 2-dimensional art. I do a lot of quilting and fiber art, and my website has videos and instructional videos too, which may be of interest to the students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. All right, the next person is Calvin.
Hey guys, I'm Calvin Mateis. I'm a visual or photojournalist here at Knox News. I do a little bit of everything: photos, video, podcasting. Actually, a co-host on a podcast from Knox News. It's called The Scruffy Stuff. We talk about downtown and kind of like urban related topics, trends, stuff like that, best bars or whatever's happening in the news that week. Yeah, just do pretty much a lot of visual journalism stuff.
Thank you, Calvin. I see Kara was able to join with your phone. I think you're muted. Yeah. Okay. While that is on, I'm gonna let Brandon introduce himself.
There we go.
Yes, go ahead. Well, we're just introducing ourselves, like the panelists are just introducing themselves. So your name, the art you're into, and just any information you want us to know.
Okay. Well, I mean, basically, I'm a professional artist here in Knoxville. I specialize in shadowed hued portraits, and I've got a big presence online, which has helped me a lot in the monetizing department.
Thank you. So here you go, Brandon.
All right. Hey, I'm Brandon Woods. I'm also a professional artist here in Knoxville. I earned my MFA from SCAD in 2015. After graduating, I worked at SCAD for a little while as a student success advisor, working primarily with the painting department, but also with photography, graphic design, illustration, sequential art, and just helping students try to kind of, one, both find their path, and 2, figure out a little bit of how they're going to make a living doing what they love. And then I left that to move back here to Knoxville. I was born and raised here, and pursue basically a self apprenticeship in woodworking to learn how to build what I call dimensional panels, which I'm making this work that's between sculpture and painting and incorporates science and mathematics. It's like this totally new thing that I call spatium. And I just had a major solo exhibition at the Emporium over the summer in July. And I have my own website. It's brandonwoodsart.com. And I have a 360-degree virtual tour of that exhibition on there, and also a movie-length video tour where me and my wife go through and discuss each one of those works. So yeah, there's I guess I have a lot of pans kind of, or plates spinning kind of all at once. That's that's really the best approach to marketing, I think, possible. So let's get into it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for your introduction. And I don't know if you noticed I pinned you all so students can really focus on the panel. So you're on the spotlight. Enjoy it. So I have some questions that I have prepared. And just to let everyone know, if you have questions as we move along the line, feel free to put that in the chat or raise your hand. That way I can keep track of the people asking questions and our panelists can keep track of that. So if you also want to direct your question to one person, you can indicate that as well. But some of my questions here will be for everybody and maybe follow-up questions will be for certain people. Does that sound good? All right, perfect. Then we can go ahead and get started. I think you all have mentioned a part of this in your introduction, but I would like to know kind of like how you got to where you are right now. So that is, what were those moments or things that cost you or changed or just led to, maybe you had a conversation with someone, or maybe through school, or maybe through an event or something. What is that thing, or how would you say what has contributed to your journey to where you are right now? And so that is the question. I'm going to start with Kara.
Okay. Well, the art was always the easy part. Okay. Getting to where I am right now really depends on three things: social media, art accessibility, and networking. When I say social media, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Have a big presence on social media, do things, interact with people, support other artists. And as far as art accessibility goes, what I'm talking about is being on something like, if you're going to get your start online, Etsy has a lot of traffic. A lot of people will tell you, you won't sell original artwork on Etsy. You absolutely will, if you find your niche. And then you can transfer to your own website, which is what I've done. Okay. And it also boils down to the pricing. Not everybody's going to get Picasso pricing starting out, and you've got to understand that. So quick overview, those things. And then, be a part of local markets, really get in the art community, immerse yourself in it.
Thank you so much. I think you raised very important points, which I would love us to get into more details later on. But these are very, very nice points to get us started. All right, so I'm going to move on to Calvin.
Yeah, so the way that I got into photojournalism was, I guess, I kind of lucked out, because the first day of high school, I heard an announcement for the photography club after school, and I had never thought of or picked up a camera before until that day. And then I just fell in love with it. And I emailed the photo editor at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I grew up in Milwaukee. I'm not originally from Knoxville. And I asked him, so you guys take pictures? Like, can I learn what you guys do, how this works? And he said, yeah, come on in. So for my spring break, I went in, and every single day I guess I was like 14 at the time, I went out with a different photographer for a week and discovered photojournalism. And in that moment, I knew this is what I want to do. And I pretty much devoted the next, up until this point, like my whole entire life, to getting to where I am now. I went to school for photojournalism at Ohio University. It's one of the top schools in the country for it. And I had internships at 4 different newspapers across the country, freelanced a ton, networked a lot. And I think one common theme that will come out of this discussion is how competitive the art world is, not just photography, but painting, clay, and everything that was mentioned here already. I mean, everybody has a camera, and only a very small few people that are truly committed to it will make it to where they want to be. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Just worked a lot and dedicated my life to it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going off, everybody has a camera. I know that I always say that I'm a photographer. Like, I love using phones to take pictures, and maybe I can be successful with that. But right now I'm a career coach, and that's what is important right now. But thank you so much for sharing that. And just let everyone know, in case you're not aware, we have people representing different form of art. So you hear someone talking about photojournalism or photography, you hear someone talking about painting or ceramics or clay. So just to keep you in the loop with that, if I did not mention that earlier. All right, so moving on, still the same question. I'm gonna go to Tina. You're seeing me here, Tina.
I can't hear Tina.
I started out with clay as just a hobby. It was a kind of a hobby, a release for me from working on a computer all day and doing graphic design. And I had a friend that taught clay classes, and I decided to take a beginning clay class. And like most people, started out throwing on the wheel. I wasn't really happy with that. That was not the kind of creative outlet I was looking for. So I started doing hand building. And when I started that, I knew that's where my niche was. I started out doing just simple types of masks and just small sculptures, things like that. And as I progressed, I would see objects or see animals and things that I felt like I could make that in clay. And I just challenged myself to do that. And that's where I kind of got my groove going as to what I was doing. I got into a couple of guilds, one here in Knoxville, the Foothills Craft Guild, started out there. And from that point, I decided that I wanted to go further. So I juried into the Southern Highlands Craft Guild, which is in Asheville. And that's where I think things changed for me, because they picked me as the artist for their marketing materials that year. And that was where I really, I guess, found out that I could sell my work. A lot of people say you can't really sell sculpture. A lot of people look at clay as just like for functional wear, and that's where you make your money. And people do make their money that way, but that's not what I wanted to do. And I was determined that I could sell my sculpture. So here I am today. I worked at the lab for 35 years, and then it got to where I was doing so much clay work and then doing my regular job. I had the opportunity to leave early, and I knew at that point that I wanted to do my artwork. And I am so happy that I did, because I've been able to grow and I've been able to more or less challenge myself. One of the biggest things I think that's helped me, because I had the marketing background, I've been able to do a lot of marketing for myself. And that's been a very good source for me. Online presence, when I do a show, I have all kinds of print materials that explain what the process I do, what I do. And that has really, really given me the presence that I needed to pursue and sell my work. And now I'm advancing myself even more. I'm getting into some bronze work. I'm doing some teaching. I'm going to be teaching at Aramont in November of this year. And then I'm teaching at John C. Campbell in March of next year. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. I hope you're all like taking notes, because I am. So from this introduction, I'm already taking notes. So please be mindful of that. Then Brandon, if you want to take on the question.
Sure. So let me see here. So for my undergrad, I went to MTSU and did a sort of sculpture and painting there. While I was there, I took a professional practices class with this professor still there, Erin Anfinson. She taught us all really how to write a grant proposal and how to apply for exhibitions and et cetera, et cetera. I took a lot of notes on that. And after I graduated, I was able to use that knowledge that I had gained to both get awarded a residency at the Emporium here in Knoxville, a 6-month-long residency. And I was also able to get a grant through the Tennessee Arts Commission to help me pay for all of the materials that I needed. It was the work that I made in that residency, that was what I used to apply to SCAD. And being at SCAD led to me having living in New York for a while. I had a residency at the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts, and internship at Pierogi Gallery in Brooklyn, a really well-established gallery there. And then since then, just really knowing how to write a grant proposal. And everybody has a camera, not everybody knows how to use it. And so knowing how to document my work so that it's really clear and it can give the viewer online a sense of that work. I have just really focused a lot on how to do that. And so over the past 3 years, I've been awarded grants from the Baileys through the Arts and Culture Alliance. And that gave me a soft stop table saw, gave me dust collection equipment, gave me a Canon R5. So it's just that being able to write, being able to photograph your work, being able to do all of the things that go along with being an artist, that understanding that sort of the art of it all is much broader than just producing the work in the studio. And I don't know if everybody's read this or not, but artwork, this is a really handy book to get. And there's definitely a much newer versions of it too, but I do like just even the way they wrote it on their art/work, because that's really what it takes to be a professional artist, is that it's kind of both sides of that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I see recommendations already. That is amazing. All right, Mary, if you want to take us on the question.
I think I agree a lot with what Brandon just said, that unfortunately it's a great deal of work, and it literally took me over a decade to even qualify to be considered for a lot of the jobs that I have done, because what I have done is, some of them are very high dollar, and the most expensive one I ever did, luckily, was $27,000 for one sculpture in front of a city hall. But don't forget, we're talking about very expensive materials. I have to carry $2 million of liability insurance as a professional sculptor. I have to meet all these criterias. And honestly, just working so hard, it took over 10 years just to be able to apply to be in the queue to be considered for things on that scale. So I had to struggle. I had no connections and just work hard. But as I said before, I taught art for so many years. And I do think that that means a lot, because anybody who's taught art understands what it takes, or who's had a good teacher. You do respect your teachers, and you see how much they try to give of themselves. So I think teaching art helped me in my background. And then as I was able to break out of that role and just do the artwork full time, I was able to grow and climb, but it took me so long. And I would say you just have to be very patient. But I do a great deal of what you call public art. You can look that up, but most people know the definition means that it's a percent for art. Every state in the United States has a different percentage. Some states it's 1%, some it's 1.5%, some it's a little more, some a little less. But nonetheless, every piece of new construction, whether it's a public library, a music center, or whatever it might be, a government building, a percentage of that has to go to public art. And that might be chandeliers, glasswork like Dale Chihuly, the famous glass artist. It might be paintings, sculpture. It could be almost anything. It could be integrated into the walls like glass block. It could be lighting, a lot of lighting and sound installations. Could be any kind of an installation. But in order to be considered, you have to meet their criteria. And you can look all that up online too. Just Google public art and you'll see what they expect of you, and you just can't apply unless you meet that criteria. So just working at it, never giving up, and keeping your resume active is the idea.
Right. Thank you so much. You have just like taken us to the next question, which is like the main question of the day. Like, how can creatives, how can artistic people, how can they monetize their art skills? What are some great tips you want to share? What are some stories, some lessons that you want to really say about monetizing your art skills? Because one thing I have noticed is that, and you all have mentioned it, and I think Tina particularly said it, that you say you cannot sell your sculpture, but there are a lot of things you can do, and there are a lot of ways you could sell your art. And it's probably not the most common way, or because it's not really out there in the open, people are not aware of it. So, which is why we're here today, to let you know that you can make money off this, right? So how can we do that? How can creatives make money off their art? So I'm going to start with you, Mary, because you kind of like alluded to that.
Okay, well, in order to monetize, for me in the public art world, it's already done for you. Everything has a budget. They are required to name the budget and publish exactly what the figures are, and then all the requirements. So for me, it's always been pretty easy like that. But what I would say was, if you want to figure out what others charge for their work, there's always societies and appraisers and things. And I wanted to give the names of a few of them that would help you. One of them is called the Appraisers Association of America. Another one is Art Dealers Association of America. There's International Society of Appraisers, the Smithsonian American Art Museum. These are all good things to look up, believe it or not, and see what things go for. You can also look at art auctions and see what things have sold for. That is oil painting, sculpture, glass art. You might get a feel for what things go for. If you do photography, there's something called the American Society of Media Photographers. And I was a member of that years ago. They have an explicit listing of how much a photographer should charge for hour of work, right to buy, one-time rights, all that kind of stuff, because that's how you monetize it. You need to know, is it one-time rights, or what the status of what they're going to do with it is. But I thought those groups might be helpful for you to look at.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I will go back to Brandon so we can kind of like go how it started.
All right. So most of my sales of my artwork is usually either through galleries or through just through private sales. But one thing that I've found is that even when working with a gallery, that it's not like it's suddenly 100% the gallery is going to be the only one trying to get your work sold. During my exhibition over the summer, I was in the gallery, physically in the gallery, at least almost every afternoon, to be there to meet people coming in, give them a tour of the show, talk to them. And that personal interaction, that's really what led to a lot of the sales that I had in that show, was just giving people that sort of personal one-on-one time, hearing what they have to say about my work. People who are going to buy your work are buying it a lot of the times because they've been able to build a personal connection with the work, and facilitating that is one of the really valuable ways of being able to actually make sales. Just giving people the freedom to express what they see in it helps them to develop that connection, which will help you make sales. Also, not everyone is able to afford a $10,000 painting, But a lot of people are able to afford a 45 or 150 or $250 print. And so getting really high resolution, either scans or photographs of your work so that you can have prints of your work available as well is also another way that you can monetize your work.
Thank you so much for that. I wish I were I was an artist because I'm writing notes, but I don't have anything to sell. So I hope everyone has something and they're taking notes. Anyway, so we'll go to Tina now. Yes, Tina.
Okay. One of the things that I think has helped me the most, I had to decide that I could not do everything. I can't do all the marketing stuff. I can't do the photography. I wanted to concentrate on certain aspects of that art world and to look at it as a business instead of just as an artist. And there's so many components, like everybody else has already said. I found out years ago that instead of me spending a lot of time trying to make my pieces photograph the way I wanted them to look, I just hired somebody that does my photography for me, and I just pull that cost into the cost of my pieces. The marketing and stuff, as far as the materials, I can do a lot of that myself. And I do some gallery work, put my work in some galleries, but what I have found is exactly what Brandon said. People like that personal interaction with you. They like to feel like they know you as a person, and that connects them better to your work. And a lot of my commission work, because I do a lot of animals, I have received commissions from some of the zoos. And that's really one of the places that I wanted to do. That was one of my target things was, I love doing zoo animals, and I love doing kind of abstract type animals and things. So I had to find the market that was best for my work. And that may not be in my hometown of Knoxville. I think whatever you do, if it's unique, you have to find that niche or that place. I do have a website that a lot of people can go to and you can purchase from there, but I wanted my website to be more like a gallery so that you would learn a lot more about me and the process. There's videos on there of my firing processes. There's videos of some of the clay pieces that I work on and how I put them together. So that helps with people who don't live here or don't ever get to meet me, that they can actually see, and learn a little bit more about me. And I think the hard part for most artists is that other aspect of looking at it like a business. And it is hard. It's a lot of work, and it takes up, I think, a lot more time than most people think. And when they see you at a show, they think, well, you just came out, blah, blah, blah. But, they don't think about you had to travel there. You had to set up your booth. You had to make the inventory. So there's a lot that goes into it. So, as Mary said, you got to be prepared to work. I mean, unless you're just very lucky and things fall in your lap, most artists have to really, really work hard to get to where they are. But I think it's worth it.
Thank you. I like the way you ended. You think it's worth it. It really is worth it. So that's good. Ray, thank you for the question. We will get to that just after they finish answering this question. But thank you so much for posting your question. So Calvin, we'll get to you with the question.
Yeah, I think I come at it from a little bit of a different angle because most people here are entrepreneurs. They work for themselves. They're self-employed. They're trying to promote, sell, do everything that somebody like me who works for a company for most of their career has not had to deal with. But I mean, I was an entrepreneur. I was self-employed. I was doing a lot of freelance stuff before I ended up here when I was in college. And I think for me, I mean, same thing with all these other mediums. There's so many different avenues you could go with painting or sculpture work or whatever you're doing. I think you just have to find your niche and pursue that wholeheartedly. I mean, I thought for a really long time I wanted to be a sports photographer. So I got a job with the the Ohio University sports department and was a staff photographer there, but I found that I don't like shooting sports day in, day out. I like meeting people every single day, and covering a whole variety of topics in my professional capacity. But then also personal work would be more just fun photos I take on the weekend, street photography, that sort of thing. So I think you really have to find your niche and pursue that. But also, I think you have to, as an entrepreneur, self-employed, you have to really put yourself out there, engage with others, like Brandon was talking about, and just sell yourself and sell your work. And also what Mary said is know your worth as well. Don't sell yourself short just because you want to be nice or something. No, you're putting in your time and a lot of effort into that. So I just took a couple notes here. But yeah, also learn to recognize opportunities when somebody's talking about they're looking for somebody to take some photos or want to hire somebody for a commission to do some art or whatever it might be. Learn to recognize those opportunities and pursue them. And just remember that there's always going to be somebody out there that wants to pay you for your vision and your art.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the different perspective you're bringing to this conversation. I appreciate that. All right, so Karen.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of everything that everybody else has said, if you guys get this book, it's by Paul Smith. It's called Sell with a Story, How to Capture Attention, Build Trust, and Close the Sale. It doesn't matter, what you're selling. Everybody, when they buy artwork or, any other thing that you're selling, when they buy artwork specifically for this, are they buying what you created? Absolutely. But they're also buying it because of the story that goes behind it. There have been a couple of panelists who have said, they have a website and it walks people through their process. That's really important. People want to know whose vision am I buying? Okay. They want to know your story. So I also have a website and I talk about my story and my process and some of the things that I've done. And as far as monetizing things, like I said earlier, there are three aspects for me, and I have a marketing background as well. Social media, art accessibility, networking. And then, of course, like everybody else has said, find your niche, find your audience. You can be selling the best piece of artwork that anybody has ever seen. But if you're around a bunch of people who aren't interested in art, guess what? You're not going to sell it. Okay. So you have to find your audience, and I spent a lot of time spinning my wheels, trying to figure out where my audience was. I was doing markets here locally in Knoxville, some of which my audience just wasn't at. Okay. And I finally got into the groove and figured out, where my people were. Okay. And most of my sales are online sales, actually to different states. Okay. But most of my commission work comes from Knoxville and Atlanta and Nashville. So I've definitely got my commission circle there. But again, it's all about finding your niche, tell your story and tell it well, because you are essentially selling yourself. And know where your audience is. That's the most important thing. You've got to get in front of the right people. And that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I'm excited for all that I'm hearing. So we're gonna get to Ray's question now, and I'm not gonna call out names. So if you have anything to add to this question, like if you have the answer, if you want to share anything, feel free to go ahead. But I'm gonna read it from the chat. It says, could you talk more about commission work? How do you reach your clients? What is your process for contracts? That's like 3 questions in one. So if you want to address it all, if you need me to repeat it at any point, feel free to let me know. But I'm going to just throw it to our panelists, whoever wants to take on that, and go ahead. Yes, Kara.
I will say that the most common question I get asked is, well, what's the process for your commissions? Well, the process for my commissions are, they tell me what they want. They tell me what their vision is. And then I blend that with my own. Now, as far as monetarily, my my process is I collect 50% of whatever the price of the artwork is up front to start. Okay. And then I collect the remaining 50% when I finish. And it makes it very simple. People feel very comfortable doing that. You know, most of my communication with my clients is through email or some sort of written correspondence, which is not necessarily a contract, but it does serve a purpose into keeping up and keeping a record of what has been promised. You know, as far as revisions and whatnot, be very specific with them. Say, you know, I do X amount of revisions as a painter. If you don't, you're going to end up doing 20, 30, 40 revisions, and it's going to take you a lot longer. But you can't go back and change the price on them. So you have to say, you know, you get 3 revisions or 4 revisions or even 2. But, you know, there's got to be a process, and you have to have that process for every single one of them, in my opinion.
For me, with commission work, because I do clay work, I usually don't take any payment up front. Because there's so many factors that can happen in that process. I mean, I could spend, you know, weeks on a piece and then it blow up in the kiln, and then there I am. So I feel more comfortable with my work. I do talk to the clients, see what they like, and usually it's based on some type of work that they've seen of mine before, or they know me, or something of that sort. I have commissions that I've done for the Calgary Zoo in Alberta, Canada, for the last 4 years. They saw my work at the Knoxville Zoo, and they commissioned me to do some stacked animal sculptures for them. And every year we've done those as a project together. They've told me the combination of animals that they wanted, and then I do the combination and ship those to them, and then paid afterwards. And that's really the way I prefer to do it, just because I feel more comfortable that way. And commissions, even though they sound good, it's a lot of pressure, because you know you're going to have to satisfy that customer, and unless the customer is, you know, I guess open-minded about what you're doing, especially in clay, because it's not a photograph. It's not an exact replica of anything, except it's what's coming from your mind. So it's kind of a, you know, one of those things where they may like it, they may not. And I'm fine with that, because at the point where it's fired and finished, it's not like I can go back and revise it. I would have to start over. So I look at that as, even if they don't like it and they decide they don't want the piece, it's a piece that's mine, and I can take that piece, I can showcase it, I can sell it to somebody else. So I don't worry about it. But, you know, everybody's got their own investment in it. So you have to decide for yourself what works best with the commissions.
I would say that my commissions have those have mainly come through works that the viewers have seen that have already been purchased. I have a series of works that are on display in the Georgian Terrace in Atlanta, which is a really high-end hotel, and those pieces are really prominently displayed in their lobby. And so I've had some commissions from that. And then also I've had commissions just from just people seeing just kind of individual works. And then I do the 50% up front too. I take the other 50% when the work is finished, but before the work leaves my studio. And that's a rule kind of across the board, like commission or not. Like if it's original work too, you make sure you get all of your money before the work leaves the studio, because the second the work is out of your studio, it's going to be hell for you to try to get the rest of your money for that. One thing that I like to do in terms of contracts is I like to include a deadline. So I'll give myself fairly generous deadline. I'll discuss with the client how soon they need the work by, to just kind of determine like how fast do I need to get this made. If I'm putting 100% of my time into it, if they need it, next month or something, then I'm going to be charging a premium for that. But I'm also including in my contract that there's like a deadline. If I don't have the work finished by this date, then I'll give them a percentage back on that work. So it might wind up being that they only pay me 40% whenever the work is finished of the 50% that they would owe me if I don't meet that deadline. But meet the deadlines. I always meet my deadlines too. Let's see, and then I think it was Cara that was saying about the importance of communication. The email is really helpful, and whenever you talk to the client on the phone or in person, just immediately follow up with them by email so that you have that record, that written record there, so that you can reference back to it, so that if there's any questions, you can just go right back to the records that you have and show, okay, no, this is what we agreed on then, and then that way that you can move forward from there.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add to that? All right. Okay, so keep your questions coming. If you have questions, feel free to add that to the chat or raise your hand and then we can get to that. All right. So another question I have here is, I know I had a couple of questions. All right. So what are some of the challenges? And I know these are questions that maybe you've heard a lot of time, but so what are some of the challenges? But I don't want you to end there. I want you to be able to please tell us what are some of the challenges you have faced in this journey, but what did you do? How did you overcome the challenge, or what did you learn from it? Does that make sense? So what are some of the challenges? What did you learn from it? And I'm going to leave that open so anyone can jump on that.
Well, I'll go ahead then. I guess for the challenges, some of the things that we've talked about before, you do have to find your market. And that may not be something that's easy to do. I mean, especially if it's not in the area where you live in, you may have to try a couple of different shows. You may have to try to put your work in a couple of different locations. Rely on your peers and things that know that they're successful in other places. But you do have to research that so you know where your work will sell. Otherwise, if you try and bend your work just to sell, then you're not doing yourself any justice by doing that. My biggest market is not in Knoxville, it's in Asheville. And I found that out when I was actually, when I got into the Southern Highlands Craft Guild, and that's where I started doing shows, and that's where my work would sell. And in the same token, here in Knoxville, it was a different type of art that was not as successful here. It took me several years before any of my work became successful in this area. And I was fine with that because I had found my niche. And even selling online, you may be able to send your work all around the country, but like we were saying before, as far as the personal touch, unless you travel to some of those places, those people will never meet you. So your work would have to rely on what you have as far as the online presence or just word of mouth or something like that. So there is, I think, a good benefit if you are willing and able to travel, even to just see other areas where art is, there's a good art market, and just see if your work would fit in there or not. There's really no other way to find that out unless somebody just happens to see your work and picks up on it or something like that, or they see it in another gallery or things like that. But it's a challenge to, once people find out and you pursue exactly what you want to do, you do have to find that place where you fit in.
Thank you.
I can go ahead and go next. I think right off the bat, the art world is extremely costly to get into. I mean, photography, you're buying a camera, you're buying lens, you're buying a laptop, you're buying software to edit the photos, videos. And same thing goes for any other medium. I mean, there's equipment involved. Like, I don't know how you fire some of your clay work in a kiln. I don't know if you have your own kiln or something,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's expensive stuff. And, paints and all, it's extremely costly. And growing up, I worked several jobs to make the money to buy all my equipment. Fortunately, here working for a company, they give me all the gear that I need and more. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I have a lot of freelance friends that have to buy their own equipment, buy their own camera insurance and all that stuff. So right off the bat, cost really. But also another challenge, like in all these fields, it's extremely competitive. Everyone has camera, everyone thinks they're an artist. And you just gotta really put yourself out there. And I think there's also somewhat of a process to finding success or finding a full-time position. I know for myself, I did the internships. I had 4 internships. I did a lot of freelance work. I never said no to an assignment. I worked my butt off throughout college and photojournalism school, and just connecting with a lot of people, going to conventions or just like local photo meetups, or just like finding people through Instagram to connect with. I mean, connecting with others, finding your community will help lead you to some form of success, whatever that means to you.
Does anyone else want to share challenges? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go. Okay, so whenever it comes to challenges, cost is definitely one of the biggest things, and that's part of that is really just budgeting budgeting both your time and your money. Any kind of entrepreneurial role that you might have, if you're a professional artist, you're also an entrepreneur. And that's really valuable to keep that in mind. When it rains, it pours. So you're going to make a good amount of money on your work, 1 month, and then it might be 2 months or 3 months that it's just really slow. And I mean, you might not sell anything for an amount of time. And it's those low times that you have to prepare for, during times of plenty. And it's those times where I honestly, like, self-care is more important too. That it's easy for that self-doubt to start really creeping back in, that like imposter syndrome that so many of us deal with whenever we're not just having immense success. And so it's keeping yourself healthy, physically and mentally, and like just building in that budget for your money too. One thing that I would recommend, and this is another cost, but as soon as you are able to get an accountant, get a good accountant, because they will really actually help you save money. And Then also in terms of budgeting your time, you've got to you've got to learn what things are worth doing, what things are worth saying no to. And more than anything, if it's not something that you are getting, that you personally are getting something out of, either either financially or like in terms of moving your artwork forward or something like that, then it's not worth doing. And so it's learning to say no so that you can open up more time for your work. That's also going to be it's a big challenge, and but that's going to help you to just have the time that you need there to create your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. All right. Sounds good. I wonder what I did when I started and made this in 1 hour, because I feel like there's so much questions, so much that I want to learn. But we have just 1 hour. So what at this point, what I'll be interested to know, and I think some people will be interested to know, is what informs your art? What would you say gives you inspiration, especially when it just feels like nothing is coming on, right? What do you need to do? What is that song you need to listen to? Or I'm just saying generally. For me, probably song. That's, I'm using that as an example. But what really informs your art? So anyone can take on that. Yes.
Gosh, well, I can sum it up in one word. What inspires my art is music. And, I paint everything from musicians to abstract songs. And I know that may be kind of difficult for some people to wrap their head around, but music is absolutely what inspires me.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. I would say the same thing. And also I'm very inspired by the classics. I like to look at museums and the art books that show the classics, and I want to keep the classics alive. So I try to do a lot of realistic sculpture because I do want to keep those classics alive.
I think my love of animals has really inspired me. And I always look at animals and think about what kind of personality they would have. And that's what comes through, I think, in a lot of my pieces.
I see art as the freedom to run headlong and at full speed down every rabbit hole I can find. And so each piece that I make is almost kind of like a first in its own right, because I'm always exploring something different that has either come to mind while creating the last piece, or that is really just a question or a challenge that I've posed to myself to figure out how to do it. So moving from thinking, oh, hey, you know what, I would probably really be able to save money and also have more flexibility if I just start building my own painting panels, to, well, why does every side have to be the same length? I can make work like Kenneth Noland or Carmen Herrera or someone like that who makes these shaped pieces. Then why does the depth have to be the same on every side? To like going through like studies of perception in neuroscience and things like that, to understand really how we see the world versus how we perceive the world, and how can I build a panel that better reflects that. And so so it's a myriad of different things, from just from science, mathematics, from art history, that and really just nature. Leonardo da Vinci is really one of my favorite artists, and one of the things that he said was go out constantly and draw nature, look at nature closely. And you'll find a lot of the formal and like idea things like Tina is finding in animals through just going and outside and kind of looking around and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, and for me, it's just finding beauty in the mundane. Life is kind of runs through its own cycles, and everything repeats itself, and it gets kind of mundane sometimes. And I think finding that beauty through light and color and shadows and capturing that in one moment is what drives me, and to see the world and experience the world and capture and be part of it in that way.
Thank you all so much. So the final question I have, and I'm cheating because I want to add two questions together, but it's my final question. So the final question I have is, can students or people here, can they stay connected to you, and how would you want them to stay connected? Like if it's your website, I know I have some of you sent that to me, but like if it's your website, please let us know, or if you have social media, or if anyway you want them to stay connected. Then my question, my other part of that question is just final tips, final words to everyone here. So we don't to avoid Zoom, like let's just go away. Let's start with Carol and then we can go around.
Okay. The best way to keep in touch with me is either through my website, which is klockmillerart.com. Also, you can find me on Instagram. I have I'm on there a lot. It's at KLOCKMILLERART. And you can also communicate with me that way. And what was the second half of your question? I'm sorry.
Just final words, final things you want to have in.
Well, my final words would be unique. Find your niche, be unique. Ask yourself what sets you apart, because that's what other people are going to want to know about you. Wrap your story around that. What sets you apart? What makes you so different than all the other artists? And when you can answer that, you can market yourself. You can monetize your artwork.
Thank you. All right, so Calvin, next one.
Yeah, best way to find me is probably Instagram. That's where all the photographers are these days. It's at Mateis Photo, or you can just search my name, Calvin Mateis. I have a website, calvinmateis.com. And then my final words would be just follow your passion, throw everything you have at it, and it'll work out in the end if you really want it.
Right, thank you. Tina.
You can visit my website. It's curryoriginals.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Tina Sculptress. And I guess my final words are never stop seeking knowledge. Don't ever stop, working towards something or learning. If you get an opportunity to take a workshop, read books, anything like that, because if you put yourself in that bubble, you really can't expand to your greatest potential. And sometimes you need that push or that information from other people that are doing the same type of thing you're doing, or they're just in the arts. So keep your mind open and learn as much as you can and just keep going.
Yeah, thank you. Mary.
Good advice. My website is maryrudin.com. And on Instagram, it's Mary Rudin Art. And again, never give up and really stay in touch with the other things that are out there. Knoxville is just a very small place, but the world is full of artists, and my influences really come from other places and even other countries. And my commissions mostly come from other states. So stay in touch with what the world is doing and don't just have your head in a little bag. Always stay very open and never give up.
All right, thank you. All right, last but certainly not the least, Brandon.
All right, so my website is brandonwoodsart.com. If anybody wants to email me, they can email me at brandon@brandonwoodsart.com. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's at brandonwoodsart. I try to be really consistent with that as much as I can. Same thing for Twitter, even though I barely really get on there anymore. And I also I have the same thing for LinkedIn. But my final advice would be I have these two, well, I have more rules than this, but my first two rules are do what you love and make good work. Do what you love, because whenever it comes to whatever industry you're going into, whatever you're doing, you're going to be facing a lot of competition. Whoever loves what they're doing, truly loves it, that they're their best selves because they're doing it, they're the people who are going to succeed. So if you're running into an industry that you don't love, run away. Go pursue what you love doing, that really brings out like the very best of you, and then make good work. And really what that means is just whatever you put your hand to, do it to the very best of your abilities. And yeah, that's it. So thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here, for taking time this evening to just share wonderful knowledge with us. I'm really appreciative of all that I learned today.
Not connected.
If I probably was an artist, I would use all of those things, but I'm in a place where I can tell students, tell people about it. So I will be sure to do that. And that's why I wanted you all to share your contact information for how students can reach you, because it's recorded. And so we'll have students like, or people just watching it again. But thank you all so much, both our panelists and everyone that attended today. And if you want to stay in touch, you know how to now. So go, they said go and do good, know your worth and enjoy it. Okay. Thank you all so much. Do enjoy the rest of your evening. If you want to clap, we can do that. But thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm so thankful for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robert.